Hello everyone, welcome to another My 2015 tutorial. In the last lesson we had rigged our catapult that we had been working on for a while, and in this tutorial we're going to create fireballs to launch out of our catapult. So this lesson is going to be a little bit of a mix-up of animation and dynamics is pretty much what this is going to boil down to. So to begin with, I'm going to actually want to have a ground plane. So I'm going to create a plane, create polygon primitive plane, and it started over here, so I'll have to scale it up from here. It's fine. And the reason why I need one of these now is because once I start throwing a fireball, if it doesn't have a ground plane, then it'll just fall into empty space. So, alright, so next thing we'll need is a ball to be my fireball. So I will create another polygon primitive. This one will be a sphere, and we'll bring it from over here over to my catapult. Okay. And I'm going to name my sphere here. I'm going to call this one Mesh Fireball. Alright. So we now need to change our menu sets into the N Dynamics menu. And some of you may be thinking, why N Dynamics? Anyone who's had experience with Dynamics. Mainly just because the Dynamics, regular Dynamics menu, some of the fields don't necessarily play nice with the effects when it comes to throwing them. So creating this ball into an end cloth, I'm using these as passive gliders for the end cloth. It makes the fireball behave a little bit better. So that's the reason why we're going to go with that route. Of course, you can go with regular Dynamics. It's just seems like it's more prone to not working correctly. So for the sake of ease, we're going to just stick with going with end cloth. Okay, so I'm going to now turn this guy into an end cloth. So I changed my menu sets from polygons to end dynamics. Now over here it says end mesh. In my drop down menu sets, I want to turn this into an end cloth under end mesh and just select create end cloth. Okay, so what did that do for me? Looks like nothing's really changed here, but if you press play down here, you'll see now that the ball will drop. It won't collide with anything, but it'll drop because we haven't created any colliders yet. So I'll have to back this guy back up, bring it up over here, and I'm going to turn this catapult arm into a collider because otherwise this ball will just keep on falling. And I want to eventually get caught inside this guy anyways. Actually, you know what? I want this ball to be a little bit bigger. Otherwise it might not. It might get stuck in this net. So let's see here. There we go. That's better. Alright, so now I'm going to turn this into a passive collider. So I'll select my catapult arm, and underneath where I created the end cloth, right next to it, end mesh, there's create passive collider, and that's what I want. So I'll select that now. Again, looks like nothing has changed, but if we go to our attribute editor from here, you can see how it says end rigid shape 1 over here. Go to attribute editor, and there's this whole little section here under collisions. Says display color, and right now you can't see anything because its solver display is turned off. If we go ahead and turn collision thickness on, you can now see that this is what mine's going to be using to decide whether your ball is going to be passing through it or not. So now when I press play, the ball goes and it stops inside this netting. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're looking at it, you're like, well, the ball just collapsed into a clump, and that is not going to be a good fireball. And you're right. But there's some menu sets that we can adjust that will make this ball behave like a ball. Because right now it's trying to behave like a piece of cloth, and that's just the default setting for end cloth because it's primarily used for creating clothing. But it could be used for a bunch of different things. We go to so I just selected on our fireball here. I'm still inside the attribute editor. See how it says end cloth shape 1. And the first one down here says presets. Now, if I want to, I can go through underneath the channel box, click on the inputs for end cloth shape 1, and I can manually go through all these attributes and make this ball behave the way I want to. But that requires a lot of explanation on every one of these attributes, knowing what each one does and how it'll affect the end cloth. And I could probably do it over the course of a day or so, but they create presets to kind of shave down the time to where you can make your workflow much more streamlined. So we'll go back to our attribute editor and we'll look at our presets, and it tells you what so basically what they did is these presets already have all those attributes changed to where this ball will behave the way that we intend it to. So you can see here it says airbag, beach ball, durlap, whatever. I found solid rubber works pretty good. It does make the fireball kind of bend a little bit where it rests, but I think that would be okay. They also have concrete, but I've noticed that concrete sometimes gets stuck inside the collider. So we'll go with solid rubber for today. If you want to play with concrete, play with any of these. It's fun just to play with the presets and see what there is. And you can always go with, we can do replace, and then I can also go to concrete afterwards and say, you know what, actually let's add a little bit, let's do a blend of 25% concrete as well. So now it took the rubber and it put a little bit of concrete result in it as well. So now it adjusted those attributes to where it's a blend of rubber and concrete. So now if we hit play, let's see how it looks. So now it falls down. There we go. And it stays inside the catapult arm. Okay, great. So now we have, and we can turn off our collider here. We don't need to see this anymore. Let's go ahead and knock that off. All right. So that's all fun, but the funnest part is making the thing turn on fire. So to do that, we actually have to add a fire effect. And again, there is ways to where you can create particle emitters through the dynamics menu and have it work that way. But again, that is a by hand method, and it takes a lot longer to set up. And they already have some stuff already built into Maya to where you can already have like fires jump out of this guy. So we're going to switch from end dynamics to regular dynamics so you can see this. And the built-in effects they already have is just underneath effects here. So we can go to create fire, smoke, fireworks, lightning, shatter, etc. The one we're looking for is fire though, and we're opening up the submenu for this guy. And this is important because if you don't have this set up correctly, when you create your fire, you throw your fireball, the fire won't follow with the object. So we need to make sure that the object on fire, its name is put in here. And I can see mine says, I did this before, so I'm just going to have to re-put this in because I had lowercase mesh underscore fireball. Okay. And you can adjust all these settings down here as well. So your fire density may be lower, your start radius may be different. You could go ahead and adjust all these. Your speed, you may want to kind of a lot faster. You may want it to be more intense. You may want not to come out of the Y direction. Maybe you're doing a rocket and you want to come out of the ground. You can change it from positive Y to negative Y. Or maybe you're having it rocket along like the side of the ground. You want it to be in the Z. These are all things you can change very easily. So Y is going to be what the fire direction Y is what we want. All these settings here will be good for right now. If we want to change it later on, we can always go and to the attributes and after we've created it and adjust it by hand. We can also change it to where it's not just coming from the surface. We can have it coming from all directions or a directional point, but surface is what we want. Okay, so go ahead and hit apply. We'll close this down. And now when we hit play, now you're maybe thinking to yourself when you first see this that, well, hang on a second, and this may be a bunch of little green dots instead, or balls instead of little looking smoke. You're like, wait a minute, I thought we created fire. Why does it look like smoke? It won't create fire inside the preview window here. We'll have to actually render it for you to actually see the fire. So if you click on this little movie take up here, you'll be able to see that there's actually fire here. There we go. You can see the fire looks great. So, all right. So, last thing we're going to look at here is we want to actually throw this fireball, and we're going to do some simple animation here just to get this whole ball rolling. And to begin with, we got this master control here, and when you create something that's dynamic like this with the end cloth and the fire and all that, and it's coming to rest inside this catapult arm, you want to give the physics like about 20 frames to come to rest. So for my control curves, I'm just going to hit S on frame 1, go to frame 20, hit S again, and I'm just going to do that for all of them. That way that I don't accidentally forget when I'm doing something later down the road and animate without that buffer in place. Okay, so now the first 20 frames is just the ball landing in there. Now I want to roll this guy a little bit forward before I launch it. So from frame 20 to frame, let's say 100, because we're doing 25 frames per second, or I'm sorry, 29 frames per second. We want to make sure that as we're going forward, the ball doesn't roll out the back. Over 29 frames a second, that means that from frame 20 to frame 100, it's less than 3 seconds. So it's going to be a slow move forward. So I'll just move forward, let's say about that much. That for a catapult seems pretty decent. So going back to frame 1, let's see how that looks. Doesn't move at all to begin with. It comes to a rest, and it slowly starts going forward. Catapult goes forward. The ball doesn't roll out the back. If you make it go too fast, the physics is calculating the movement of the ball. So what's going to happen is the ball will roll out the back if you make it move too fast. So if we animate the catapult, the physics takes care of the fireball. Okay, so on frame 1, we already put a keyframe in. We already froze it at frame 20. Now, at frame, let's say 70, I'm going to add one more keyframe because I don't want to launch quite yet. And when it gets to frame, let's say 100, I'm going to rotate my catapult arm up, and I'm going to rotate, let's see here, frame 100, I need to have the flexor, it's going to flick just a little bit. So this is what I create here is the catapult arm going, or the catapult goes forward up to frame 80, and then it launches, and then once it gets to the end here, it's going to flick. And I think that I even have this happening a little bit too soon. So I'm gonna do a highlight over this. So all I did is I held down Shift, left mouse button over the timeline area I want to move, grab the middle part, and I'm going to drag it actually to about to frame 100. That way, when the catapult stops, that's when it gets that little extra flick, because I want it to be looking like the catapult arm came to a lurch stop, and it caused the catapult arm to bend just a little bit before it goes back to its normal shape. which will be at frame 30. There we go. So you can see that little flick at the end where like the wood just bows a little bit. Okay, good. And then at frame 130 it goes back to its normal shape. Now I know you guys are probably thinking in the background like, what about the fireball? I saw it just fall on the ground. And that's because when you're scrubbing the timeline, the physics doesn't want to play nice. It isn't going to calculate as you're scrubbing. You'd have to cache it out to be able to do that, and that's going to be something we'll save for a different lesson. But let's go ahead and press play here and see what we got. So from frame 1 comes to a rest in here. Got a little bit of an animation rolling forward, and now we launched our catapult, and our ball is probably flying way over there, and it's probably going to go right through the map because we haven't turned this into a passive glider yet. So let's go ahead and, yep, there it goes. Alright, so let's go back one more time. Select our catapult mesh here. We'll go to in dynamics again, and we'll go to end mesh, create passive glider. So now when we go and launch our catapult fireball, it should get a little bit of a different view here. There we go. And that's a pretty good throw for the catapult too. It's a good distance. And then it bounces off the ground and comes to a little bit of a rolling halt. And that's perfect. All right. So I think that we'll go ahead and call that the end of this lesson. In the next lesson, maybe we'll set up a little bit of a scene and do a little bit of rendering with this, so that we can I'll explain how to set up a good light setup, a good camera setup, and then how to do batch rendering will be the next lesson. So thanks for watching, and I will see you guys in the next lesson.